The manga kicks off with the familiar sound of the school bell, signaling the end of the day. Outside the classroom, a group of boys chat excitedly about a certain girl, remarking on how lucky her class is to have her. Inside, she approaches Kanata, the MC, and asks if he is heading home, suggesting they walk together. Nervously, he agrees, but she suddenly remembers that she forgot her bag and rushes back to retrieve it. As she walks away, the boys outside swarm around him, bombarding him with questions. One curious lad bluntly asks if he's her boo, but he squats that notion away, pointing out they're just longtime pals. When she returns, she curiously inquires about the commotion, only to find herself surrounded by eager classmates, all competing for her attention and inviting her to go with them instead. Without hesitation, she turns each of them down. Observing the scene, Kanata inwardly remarks on just how incredibly popular his childhood friend, Marika, is. On their way home, she walks beside him, clearly frustrated. With a sigh, she complains about how everyone keeps staring at her chest, expressing her disdain for the attention. Noticing his silence, she tilts her head and asks if something is wrong. He assures her that it is nothing, but deep down, he is lost in his own thoughts. He harbors a deep-seated crush on her, yet his overwhelming unpopularity convinces him that confessing would be futile. Worse, he fears it would ruin their long-standing friendship. Just then, a shooting star streaks across the dusky sky. She marvels at the sight, commenting that even though it is still early in the evening, such things can still happen. On impulse, he raises his hands and claps loudly, startling her. Closing his eyes, he makes a desperate wish to understand people's affection as clearly as if it were a game. Exiting his room, he stretches and reflects on the strange wish he made the previous night. Dismissing it as a fleeting thought, he is greeted by his mother. He returns her greeting but suddenly freezes, his gaze locking onto something beside her. A meter. She tilts her head, noticing his stunned expression, and playfully asks why he's staring at her face. Snapping out of his daze, he hurriedly dismisses it, muttering that it is nothing. His dog, Mimiko, barks excitedly at him, and once again his eyes land on a meter, this time beside the animal. To his shock, both meters appear to be full. Leaving the house, he shuffles through his thoughts, attempting to make sense of what he has seen. As he observes the people around him, he notices that the meters do not appear on strangers or his male classmates. Upon entering the classroom, he convinces himself that he must be imagining things. However, the moment he greets everyone, he is hit with a startling realization. All the girls have visible meters, yet none of the boys do. A cold sweat forms as the truth dawns on him. Is this the love meter he wished for? Before he can dwell on it further, a classmate, Mikasa, approaches, wondering why he is standing there, lost in thought. His gaze immediately falls on her meter, which is only half full. Intrigued, he wonders if this is normal. Without thinking, he gently brushes a stray piece of lint from her hair. To his astonishment, the meter rises. She thanks him with a smile, but he remains frozen, utterly bewildered by what just happened. She asks if something is wrong, but he hurriedly assures her that it is nothing. Another girl suddenly calls his name, and as he turns toward her, she frowns at him with an irritated expression, demanding to know why he is sitting at her desk. At that moment, he watches her meter drop. Quickly apologizing, he internalizes yet another realization. He can now see people's affection for him in real time. Suddenly, a familiar voice reaches his ears. His breath catches as he turns around, preparing to see Marika's feelings for him laid bare. Yet as his gaze lands on her, he is left in shock. Her meter is completely malfunctioning. Disbelief washes over him. He trembles as he nervously greets her, barely managing to keep his voice steady. She looks at him in confusion, unaware of the turmoil within him. Slumping into his seat, gloom settles over him. His love life is doomed. The next time he blinks, the school bell rings once again, signaling the end of the day. Snapping out of his thoughts, he is startled to realize that he had spent the entire class lost in despair. As he grapples with an unsettling idea, he wonders if she was just putting up with him all these years out of nostalgia. But before his mind can spiral further, Marika-chan approaches, observing his somber face, and inquires about his well-being. Shifting uncomfortably, he brushes it off, even though her mysterious vibe is what's really messing with his head. She offers to help, encouraging him to cheer up, saying she prefers his usual energetic self. Baffled, he seeks a glance at her meter again, but the numbers just won't add up. Shrugging it off, he convinces her he's all good. She gives him a skeptical look, wondering if he's for real, and he doubles down on his assurance. And just when he thinks he's in the clear, she hits him with the classic, "You free after school?" The unexpected question catches him completely off guard. Afterwards, seated on a park bench beside her, Kanata absent-mindedly stares at the ice cream in his hands. A question lingers in his mind: why is he even here, eating ice cream with her? She, on the other hand, appears entirely unfazed. Casually, she asks if he chose that flavor. He nodded, explaining that since it was a limited-time offering, he got curious. Without hesitation, she asks for a taste. Flustered, he hesitantly offers her a spoonful. She takes a bite and hums in approval, commenting on how good it is. In an unexpected turn, she decides to return the favor, offering him a bite of her own. His face heats up, and just as he is about to accept, she abruptly eats it herself instead, leaving him dumbfounded. Amused, she asks if he is chewed up now. So flustered, he grumbles that her tactics are unfair. She merely shrugs, saying that it would bother her if he did not act like his usual self. With a playful smirk, she reaches out and lightly pokes his nose. His cheeks immediately flush. He wonders why she seems so enthusiastic when her meter is supposedly broken. Doubt creeps into his mind, and could the meter itself be unreliable? Before parting ways, she tells him that she will head home now, bidding him goodbye. He responds in kind, watching as she disappears into the distance. Back in her room, Marika sits on her bed, clutching her phone as she scrolls through pictures of Kanata-kan. Letting out a wail, she laments in frustration and asks why won't he look at her. Little did he know, the love meter wasn't acting up. It's actually just revealing the harsh reality. Her love for him is so intense that the meter is freaking out. She's on a mission to make him see her, no matter what. The next day, Kanata arrives at school, still annoyed by the cursed meter hovering over Marika-chan, wondering what he should do about it. His gaze shifts to Toyotomi-san, noticing that her meter is also low, though still better than Marika's. Imagining a worst-case scenario, he quickly shakes the thought away. The number is unreasonably low, prompting him to uplift it to the same standards as the rest. A genius idea dawns on him. Why not cozy up to Toyotomi-san? Sneaking up on her and shouting her name, he gives her a jolt as she demands to know what he's after. Nonchalantly, he asks about her favorite food, throwing her off with his out-of-the-blue query. He spills that curry rice takes the cake for him. Irritated, she fires back that she never inquired. In the second period, he's pretty sure they're on the road to friendship. He keeps trying, though. When he goes up to her again and excitedly mentions his good news from yesterday, she brushes him off. But then he blurts out that he won a golden ticket for the first time ever. She gives him a skeptical look and asks if he's serious, but before she can get a straight answer, he's gone, leaving her puzzled. During lunch break, seeing another opportunity, he approaches her yet again. She cannot believe his persistence. He insists that they should work together in AD class and even offers to carry her things. His relentless efforts only worsen her perception of him, causing her affection meter to plummet even further. By the fifth period, he tries again, but this time she loses her patience. Cornered against a wall, she shoots daggers at him and demands to know what's eating him. He attempts to defend himself, but before he can spill the beans, she pivots on her heel and tells him to zip it. Crushed, he sludges as the minutes tick by. On his way home, he ponders that he just wanted to be friends, but the fluctuating meter stresses him out. It's exhausting when he can't control it. While strolling, his gaze is captured by the park, triggering a wave of childhood memories of playing with Marika. Suddenly, the sound of quiet sobs reaches his ears. Turning toward the source, he sees a little girl crying. Concerned, he kneels down and asks what is wrong. She sniffles, pointing at her knee, complaining that it hurts. Gently, he asks if she fell, acknowledging that it must have been painful. Pulling out some supplies, he tends to her wound. As he works, she seriously asks if he is a pharmacist, making him chuckle. Puzzled, he questions where she even picked up that fancy term. Finishing the bandage, he inquires whether the pain has subsided and if she will be able to walk home. She suddenly wails that it still hurts, insisting that he take her home instead. He agrees, and her face immediately lights up with happiness. As they walk, something about her strikes him as oddly familiar, though he cannot quite place it. Eventually, they arrive at her home, and he asks if this is where she lives. She nods enthusiastically and announces her return. A voice calls from inside, asking where she had been. The moment he sees the person stepping out, the realization hits. Toyotomi-san emerges, immediately noticing him and demanding to know why he is there. At that moment, everything clicked. No wonder the child looked familiar. She was Toyotomi's sister. Seeing the situation, she bows in gratitude, thanking him for taking care of her younger sister. Nervously, he dismisses it, saying it was nothing. As he turns to leave, Mashiro clings to him, pleading for him to stay and eat with them. Toyotomi is stunned while he tries to politely refuse. Mashiro, however, insists that her sister's cooking is amazing. With a sigh, Toyotomi relents, telling him that if he is fine with it, then he should stay, though she admits she does not know his taste preferences. At that moment, he notices her affection meter rise, realizing that it would not hurt to stay, so he agrees. While waiting, he seeks a glance into the kitchen, captivated as he watches her cook. There is something unexpectedly feminine about her demeanor. However, she catches him staring and promptly tells him to get lost. When she serves the meal, he takes a bite, immediately amazed by the taste. Unable to hold back, he praises her. She explains that their parents often come home late, leaving her to handle most of the household chores. He listens attentively, impressed by her dedication, and praises her again. This time, she visibly flusters. As she wipes Mashiro's face, he watches them fondly. Initially, he had thought she was intimidating, but the reality is different. Afterward, he expresses his gratitude for the meal, preparing to leave. However, before he can move, he notices that Mashiro has fallen asleep on his lap, her affection meter now full. As he gently pats her head, he glances at Toyotomi-san, realizing that her meter has also increased. Despite her reserved nature at school, it is evident that she genuinely cares for her sister. Carefully shifting, he stands, thanking her once again. As he prepares to depart, Mashiro casually suggests he return sometime, mentioning that her sister would also enjoy his company. His heart does a little dance. Blushing, she reluctantly agrees, saying she's okay with it, and Mashiro is. After exchanging goodbyes, he attempts to leave, but she playfully insists he stay. Meanwhile, Marika checks the time on her phone and realizes it's late, rushing back in worry. Spotting Kanata with Toyotomi-san, she freezes in disbelief. She watches them interact from a distance, finding the situation suspicious. A twinge of jealousy creeps up and her love meter crashes hard, while Kanata feels an ominous presence behind him. At school, Marika's face drops as she contemplates the relationship dynamics between those two. She ponders if they're at the level of hanging out at each other's homes. Suddenly, she hears Kanata's cheerful voice as he greets everyone. Marika decides to approach him and exchange pleasantries. As she tries to ask him about yesterday, Toyotomi-san suddenly appears and greets him. The shock sets in when Kanata responds with a smile and uses Toyotomi-san's first name. Marika's mind races as she nervously questions their connection, but is relieved when Kanata explains they've recently become friends. She lets out a sigh of relief, but it's short-lived as she starts overthinking their friendship. The thought of friends with benefits sends her love meter into a frenzy, causing panic. Kanata notices her distress and asks if she's okay. Though he has no idea what is happening, he can tell it is not good. From afar, Mikasa watches them, jealousy creeping into her heart as she observes Kanata's friendship with Marika-chan. She longs to be friends with him as well and just needs to find something to talk about. She looks sad as she recalls the other day when he touched her hair. No matter what she does, she can't take her eyes away from him, and she's pretty sure it's love. Later, her attention then jumps to his pen, prompting her to make a move and inquire about it. Kanata, clearly excited, shares that he snagged it because it looks like his dog. Mikasa is floored. She never would have guessed he had a furry friend. When he asks if she has one, she reveals that she has a golden retriever. Amazed, he expresses his willingness to pet it, and she tells him she will let him if he ever gets the chance. The next day, Mikasa takes her dog out for a walk, feeling elated that she finally had a chance to talk to Kitami-kun. She secretly hopes to see him again by chance, though she knows it is unlikely. However, as if her wish had been granted, he appears and greets her. She is taken aback by the surprising encounter and wonders if it is fate. Noticing that her love meter has risen significantly, Kanata wonders about the reason. He then inquires if this is the pooch they were discussing earlier, to which Mikasa confirms his guess and presents the dog as Chocolate. He comments on the adorable name and speculates if she came up with it. She asks how he knew, and he just smiles, claiming it was a lucky guess that perfectly matches her cute personality. Blushing, she is taken aback when he casually compliments her cuteness. As she tries to process his words, a romantic shoujo manga scenario unfolds in her mind, the dogs becoming friends first, and then their owners falling in love. Her heart races at the idea, and her love meter shoots through the roof, leaving him completely astonished. Determined, he reminds himself that he loves Marika and must be careful around Mikasa, ensuring she does not get too attached to him. He then asks if he can play with Chocolate, and she happily agrees. Without hesitation, he runs off with the dog, thinking that if he trips and embarrasses himself, he might be able to lower her affection for him. Just as planned, he stumbles and falls, prompting Mikasa to rush toward him in concern. She anxiously asks if he is okay, and he groans, stating that his face hurts. As expected, her love meter starts decreasing. Kanata smirks that his plan worked. Mikasa tells him to be more careful, then turns to walk away with her dog. However, Chocolate suddenly tugs on the leash, causing her to lose balance. Kanata instinctively catches her before she falls and asks if she is all right. Flustered, she nods, saying she is fine, but her love meter surges upward once more. Gathering her courage, she shyly asks him to hold her hand. Kanata freezes in disbelief and curses his fate. Without hesitation, he gives her a cold shoulder and outright refuses. Instead of being put off by his shyness, Mikasa actually finds it cute. But to Kanata's utter dismay, a second love meter pops up out of nowhere, and it's on the rise. Poor guy is so confused. He's like a lost puppy trying to figure out girls. Love is a mysterious game indeed. Meanwhile, Marika, having run quite a distance, stops to catch her breath. Stretching her arms, she casually notes the enormous number of dog owners gathered in the park. However, her relaxed demeanor shatters the moment she spots Mikasa and Kanata together. In utter shock, she spits out her water. Her eyes remain locked on them in disbelief. She cannot wrap her head around it that he also has a connection with Mikasa. Watching them interact happily, she finds it increasingly difficult to accept. The sight of Mikasa's delighted expression unsettles her. She fumes, assuming that he's trying to impress another girl again. To her, Mikasa's expression can mean only one thing, that he's flirting with her. As her blood boils with envy, she unleashes her wrath on him, accusing him of being a flirt. Just then, Kanata feels a shiver down his spine and turns to see Marika lurking nearby. But what truly sends chills down his spine is the sight of her affection meter leveling up to something way scarier than he ever imagined. Back in her humble abode, Marika ponders her predicament. Tears streaming down her face, she fears losing her man to another gal. The clock is ticking, but she ain't going down without a fight. Flipping through the love technique guide, a mischievous grin appears on her face. Meanwhile, over in Kanata's world, he was shaken by Marika-chan's intimidating aura and knows he's got to step up his game. Spotting her at school, he's frustrated and clueless about how to win her over. While his classmates chit-chat, Kanata is laser-focused on dealing with the Hanya situation. Scared but determined, he commits to doing everything in his power to patch things up with Marika-chan. During PE class, he pants heavily, noticing that Marika is watching. He immediately becomes serious, and this is his chance to show her how cool he is. Catching the ball, he heads straight for the net and slams it in, scoring a point. Shaking with nerves, he listens to his teammates showering him with compliments. However, when he glances over at Marika, her face remains stoic. Meanwhile, her meter reveals the terrifying Hanya once again. Marika puts up a good poker face, but he can't help but notice that Sayuki and Mikasa are smitten with him more than ever. Feeling dejected, he questions why this is happening. His teammates ask if he is okay, but he remains silent, lost in thought. After school, he glances at Marika, wanting to invite her to walk home with him, but he already knows she will refuse. Still, he tries his luck and extends the invitation. With a blank face concealing her emotions, she unexpectedly agrees. He wonders why she is making that expression. On their way home, he asks if she would like to stop at a coffee shop. Still showing no visible reaction, she agrees once more, further deepening his confusion. At the cafe, they quietly enjoy their drinks. He grows melancholic, realizing he has nothing to talk about with her and starts believing she has begun to hate him. On the other hand, Marika finds their after-school outings enjoyable. The next day, determined to win her heart through his cooking, he calls her and invites her to eat with him. Smiling, she wonders what she should do. The angel advises her to decline, but the devil insists she should accept. As the angel starts crying, the devil, annoyed, punches her, leading Marika-chan to agree to the meal. On the rooftop, he feels that everything has gone well. Glancing at her to gauge her reaction, he is met with the same unreadable expression. She maintains her poker face, yet internally she struggles to contain herself. He begins to wonder if she dislikes the food, and doubt creeps into his mind. He starts feeling disheartened and even considering giving up. However, he quickly realizes he cannot, and he has liked her since childhood and wishes to grow even closer to her. Without thinking, he suddenly invites her on a date. Overcome with joy, she immediately agrees. Just then, Sayuki appears and greets them. She sits next to him, prompting Marika's look that screams jealousy alert. When he asks why she's there, Sayuki casually mentions that she just enjoys her meals in peace. But when it comes to Mashiro, suddenly she's all chatty and wants him around. As Sayuki chimes in, Marika's jealousy hits peak levels. Meanwhile, he's grinning at the idea of hanging out with Mashiro again. Sayuki, in her usual enthusiasm, invites him to hang out on their day off and promises a treat. He eagerly agrees, only to realize he already has plans with Marika. Cue Marika's angry pout and his nervous apology. The love meter goes haywire and gives him a hard slap. Stunned, he can't believe that the meter actually has a hitbox. He collapses to the ground but manages to stand up. Sayuki and Marika, concerned, ask if he is okay. Struggling to regain balance, he tells Sayuki that he already has plans for the holiday. She understands and then asks if he doesn't need to stop the bleeding. Though the meter had slapped him and left him in pain, he had succeeded in asking Marika-chan out on a date. At his home, he reminds himself that tomorrow is his date with her. With resolute determination, he sets his sights on winning her heart and figuring out how to tackle the menacing meter. The day of their date arrives. Kanata compliments her outfit, remarking on how cute she looks, but at the same time, he can't ignore how terrifying the meter beside her appears. Since it's a date, he wants to hold her hand, but the thought of making things awkward lingers in his mind. However, he quickly brushes it off, reaffirming his decision to give it his all. Taking her hand, he tells her that they should get going. Overjoyed, she agrees, her heart pounding faster. As they walk, they come across a seal and its pup. She finds them adorable and reveals that, as a child, she used to carry around a stuffed seal. Moving on, they spot penguins and she once again remarks on how cute they are. He, on the other hand, is stunned by their sheer numbers. Upon closer inspection, he realizes they are actually quite intimidating, with the sharp teeth adding to their menacing appearance. Next, they reach the aquarium's fish exhibit. As he gazes at the vast array of fish in wonder, he can't help but notice Marika's eyes twinkling with fascination. In his mind, he envisions casually placing his hand on her shoulder, but before he can make a move, she catches him off guard by asking if something's amiss. Startled, he quickly brushes it off as nothing but labels himself a coward in silence. Marika is really feeling the zen vibes and comments on the chill atmosphere. He nods in agreement, and she gushes about the cute mama and baby seal pair. With a grin, he points out her apparent love for seals. In a split second, he blurts out that he's a fan too and clumsily bumps into someone. The girl he crashed into shoots daggers at him, and he scrambles to apologize. But she's not having it and angrily scolds him to open his eyes. He's taken aback, and when she demands a response, Kanata gets nervous. Marika, sensing the tension, intervenes, trying to defuse the situation. Unfortunately, the delinquents recognize her as a second year from their school and begin picking on her instead. Terrified, he instinctively moves to protect Marika. Seeing this, she becomes overjoyed, and despite his weakness, he still tries to shield her. The delinquent girl suddenly orders him to come with her. Shocked, he hesitates, and she claims he's the type of guy who's gone his whole life without a girlfriend. Bewildered, he asks if that's really her reasoning. The other girl chimes in, questioning whether her friend actually likes guys like him. Offended, he dryly comments on the cruelty of her insult. As they try to drag him away, something inside Marika snaps. Addressing them coldly, she declares that she knows everything about them, casually hiding the death note behind her, of course. Confused, they demand an explanation, but she begins revealing their personal secrets one by one, from belting out tunes in the shower to getting the cold shoulder from a crush. Their confidence crumbles, embarrassment overtaking them. Horrified, they ask how she could possibly know such things, but instead of answering, she simply watches as they flee in humiliation. Still in shock, he turns to her and asks what that was all about. He expresses his gratitude to her for rescuing him, but she playfully argues that he was the real hero in this situation. Marika-chan showers him with compliments, calling him cool. As they're about to head off to the dolphin show, an announcement interrupts their banter. With a gleeful bounce in his step, he suggests they make a beeline for the show, and she eagerly nods in agreement. Upon arrival, she points out that front row seats are still available, so they take them. After a brief moment of observation, the dolphins begin splashing water wildly, drenching both of them completely. The trainer, baffled, wonders aloud why they are behaving so erratically today. Soaked, he quickly informs Marika that he brought towels and spare clothes just in case of an emergency. She thanks him, but as she realizes she will be wearing his t-shirt, she becomes flustered. He instructs her to meet back at the same spot after changing. A short while later, she returns, apologizing for making him wait. Smiling, he welcomes her back, thanking him once again for the towel and clothing. She appears dazed, almost drooling at the thought of wearing his shirt. After spending the rest of the day together, she remarks that it might be time to head back. However, before they leave, he notices a shop nearby and asks her to wait. He shortly returns and tells her to hold out her hands. Placing something in her palms, he reveals a small keychain, a baby seal. He explains that since she likes it, he bought one for himself as well. Blushing with excitement, she clutches the keychain tightly, clearly overjoyed. Suddenly, the ominous meter next to her starts to shift, leaving him intrigued and unsure if it's a good sign. With a warm smile, she thanks him for the keychain and compliments his shirt, leaving him speechless. The next day, she greets him cheerfully, and he eagerly returns the greeting. With a radiant smile, she suggests they walk to school together, and he instantly agrees. While the meter still looks a bit murky, he can't help but feel like they are getting closer. Little do they know, a sneaky girl following behind is watching them closely, her eyes full of mischief as she plots something devilish. The setting changes to a park where a gang of kids is teasing a girl until she bursts into tears. A boy steps in and tells them to knock it off, giving them a piece of his mind for bullying someone weaker. One of the boys, not too happy with the intervention, slaps him across the face. Suddenly, the lad's face disappears, causing the kids to freak out and run away in fear. The girl, still sniffling, asks if he's okay. With a calming grin, he assures her he's fine and returns her teddy bear. He gives her a gentle pat on the head, and she gratefully thanks him. Kanata suddenly wakes up, realizing that yesterday's heroics must have worn him out. The dream sticks in his head, reminding him of the kid who found confidence after their encounter. They used to play together often, but as time passed, they drifted apart. Now he can barely remember their name, but he hopes the kid is happy. Just then, the teacher announces the arrival of a new student. As she enters the classroom, murmurs ripple through the male students, captivated by her presence. Even he finds himself momentarily drawn in by her beauty. She introduces herself as Hidaka Nino, explaining that she has just returned from Italy and asking them to call her Nito. The teacher directs her to sit beside Katami and instructs him to help her if she needs anything. He acknowledges the request, though subtle nervousness settles over him. As she takes her seat, she turns to him, expressing that she will be in his care. He responds in agreement, though there is an underlying unease in his demeanor. When she asks him to call her Nino, he reciprocates by telling her to call him Kanata. However, something about her presence unsettles him. He notices that there is no meter next to her, which leaves him wondering if there is something he does not yet understand. His laboring gaze does not go unnoticed, and she questions why he is staring at her. He quickly brushes it off, claiming it is nothing, though she does not seem entirely convinced. Despite his confusion, he cannot deny that she holds his attention. His thoughts drift toward Marika, anticipating the usual intimidating presence of the meter next to her. Yet when he turns to look, he finds nothing out of the ordinary. Before he can dwell on it further, Nino suggests that they head out, and he follows her lead. In the cafeteria, he watches in quiet fascination as she begins eating with chopsticks. Her fluency in Japanese also surprises him. When he mentions this, she explains that she had lived in Japan until the age of 7 and grew up not far from where they are now. A thought crosses his mind, and he wonders aloud if it would be a strange coincidence if they had known each other as children. For a fleeting moment, she responds softly, almost as if speaking more to herself, but he does not quite catch her words. When he asks her to repeat them, she merely dismisses it as nothing. She then asks if he would be willing to exchange contact information. He agrees without hesitation, and while sharing their details, he glances at her profile icon. She explains that it is her favorite character from childhood. He finds it cute and, for some reason, familiar, though he cannot quite place where he has seen it before. After school, a swarm of curious students engulfs Nino, eager to uncover her secrets. Kanata stands on the sidelines, watching the chaos unfold. With a desperate look in her eyes, she silently begs for his help. Should he intervene? He's not quite sure. The others persist, trying to pull Nino away. Just before things get out of hand, Kanata steps in. Without warning, Nino grabs onto him, announcing that they already have plans together. Shocked and speechless, he can't believe his luck. Nino turns to him for confirmation, and though he's bewildered, he decides to go with the flow. As they walk together, she apologizes for dragging him into the situation without asking. He reassures her that it is fine, adding that he was worried she might get lost, so keeping an eye on her is not a problem. She responds with a smile, calling him too kind, while the others look on in jealousy. Their stroll leads them past a shop displaying an assortment of teddy bears. She pauses, curiosity piqued, and asks if he likes them. He hesitates before admitting that he has an appreciation for cute things, though he usually keeps it to himself. Her eyes glisten as she insists that preferences have nothing to do with gender. Surprised by her genuine honesty, he nervously agrees, admitting that he's a big fan of Shiba Inu's products. As they stroll along, she spots a familiar park and points it out. Curious, he asks if she remembers the spot, and she confesses she used to play there often. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off in his head, and he awkwardly claims to have a stomachache before excusing himself. She watches him go, slightly worried but patiently waits for his return. When he comes back, he thanks her for waiting, only for the moment to get interrupted by a group of boys surrounding her. Without thinking, he steps in front of her, instinctively protective. The déjà vu hits him hard, but luckily, the boys soon disperse and the tension fades away. He assumes she was being picked on, but before he can pry further, she surprises him by giving him a hug out of nowhere. Shocked, he freezes as she tells him that he's exactly the same as he's always been. His confusion deepens as she pulls away, apologizing for the sudden hug. He assures her that it is fine, though he remains perplexed. Moments later, she excuses herself, saying she needs to visit the restroom before they head back. His confusion intensifies when he sees her heading toward the men's restroom. She inquires if she never told him that she's actually a dude. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks, rendering him utterly speechless. As he gazes at her, he tentatively asks if she's the same kid he used to play with. With a chuckle, she confirms his suspicion and remarks that it's been ages since they last caught up. As the memories align, he finally remembers, but the weight of the revelation leaves him utterly dumbfounded. At Sayuki's home, she wakes up and realizes that she had fallen asleep. A familiar voice catches her attention, and she is shocked to see Kanata sitting before her. Apologizing for dozing off, she watches as he reassures her with a smile, telling her not to push herself too hard. Intrigued, she inquires about his frequent visits, to which he coolly confirms. Before she can wrap her head around it, Mashiro blurts out a proposal to hurry up and tie the knot so they can live together. Caught off guard, Sayuki clumsily spills her drink in astonishment. Stammering, she demands to know what Mashiro is talking about, but before she can compose herself, Kanata reaches out, gently wiping the water from her face. Turning to Mashiro, he playfully states that they will get married once they graduate. Flustered, Sayuki scolds him for teasing her, firmly believing that such a thing is unlikely. Blushing, she hesitantly asks if they are dating. Without hesitation, he responds that she can call it that before pointing to the ring on her hand, questioning whether they are not already engaged. His gaze softens as he asks if she has forgotten, his eyes carrying a trace of hurt. Confused and overwhelmed, she quickly denies forgetting anything if she cannot recall how they supposedly got engaged. Before she can question it further, he suddenly pulls her into an embrace, happiness evident in his demeanor. The warmth of his hold sends her heart into a rapid frenzy, and she is left speechless as he finally releases her and apologizes. The moment lingers in the air, leaving her dazed and struggling to regain her composure. He then reminds her that she needs to get ready soon, leaving her even more bewildered. When she asks what he means, he looks at her in mild surprise, questioning whether she has forgotten about their promised date. Stunned, she protests that they cannot simply leave Mashiro behind, but she waves them off, insisting that she will be fine on her own. Without another word, Kanata takes her hand and leads her away. The scene shifts to the ocean, where Sayuki finds herself standing in confusion. Uncertain why they have come here, she turns to Kanata, who looks at her with a melancholic expression. He tells her that she had so much fun yesterday, but the words do not resonate with her. Puzzled, she wonders if she truly did. He simply responds that they should get changed. A short while later, she emerges in her swimsuit, only to find him staring at her in stunned silence. Flustered, she urges him to say something. Suddenly, he blurts out an apology, confessing that he was momentarily struck dumb by her stunning looks. His heartfelt sincerity catches her off guard, prompting a deep blush before she bashfully thanks him for the compliment. He suggests heading to the water, and she agrees with a nod. While playing together, she feels a strange sensation washing over her, like she's fast-forwarded through reality. But the sheer joy she feels makes her hesitant to question it. If this is a dream, she definitely does not want to wake up. As soon as the idea pops into her head, she snaps out of her slumber. Horrified, she blinks in shock, trying to convince herself that it was all a figment of her imagination. Annoyed, she tucks herself back under the covers, determined to drift off to sleep once more. Soon enough, Mashiro arrives to rouse her, signaling the start of the school day. While getting ready, Sayuki can't shake off the lingering thoughts of the dream, sparking emotions she can't quite comprehend. She begins to wonder if she cares about Kanata more than she had previously realized. Upon arriving at school, she is still lost in thought when Kanata suddenly appears before her, greeting her with his usual charm. Startled, she stiffens, and from her perspective, he looks far too handsome. Blaming the dream for this perception, she struggles to maintain her composure. He immediately notices her unease and asks if something is wrong. Flustered, she quickly denies it, but her awkward reaction only deepens his curiosity. Skeptical, he gently reaches out, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. The unexpected touch sends her meter skyrocketing, and before she can react, he comments that she feels a little warm. Her face burns with embarrassment as she hastily insists that she is fine. He apologizes for intruding and turns to leave, but in her flustered state, she instinctively tries to stop him. As the lunch bell rings, she contemplates inviting him to eat together. However, remembering how awkward she had been that morning, she hesitates. Her attention shifts to Marika, who is currently with Kanata, and she wonders if they are planning to have lunch together. Realizing how little she truly knows about the two of them, she turns to a nearby girl for information. The girl casually remarks that Kanata and Marika are always together. Sayuki nods in agreement, but when the girl adds that they do not seem to be dating, she is taken aback. The two are undeniably close, and she had always assumed there was something between them. Perhaps Kanata is simply the type to form deep connections with others. Lowering her voice, the girl suddenly whispers into Sayuki's ear that Marika has a crush on Kanata. Sayuki refuses to believe it, but the girl insists that Marika exudes the aura of someone deeply in love. At that moment, she excuses herself, saying that she needs to buy lunch and she thanks Matsume-san. But she turns back and playfully wishes Sayuki good luck, causing her to blush profusely. Left alone, Sayuki sighs and resigns herself to eating in the classroom. Yet as she sits there, her thoughts spiral. She cannot pinpoint exactly how she feels about Kanata, but the dream had made him so happy that she had not minded it at all. However, seeing him with Marika now makes her heart race uncontrollably. Unable to suppress her emotions, she suddenly rises from her seat and rushes out of the classroom. Her abrupt departure catches the attention of the others, and they comment that they have never seen her look so desperate before. Panting, she finally reaches the rooftop, where Kanata and Marika look at her in confusion. Blushing, she hesitates before asking if it would be all right for her to eat lunch with them. The moment she utters the words, her meter blooms with delicate flowers. Kanata, momentarily taken aback, nods in agreement, and she thanks him with evident relief. Marika, on the other hand, looks stunned by the sudden turn of events. Kanata immediately realizes that he has made a misstep. His eyes meet Sayuki's, and he can't help but notice a complete shift in her aura. Even her previously plain meter is now adorned with intricate flowers. Startled, he can't help but wonder what's going on. Meanwhile, Sayuki inwardly declares she won't be defeated. Letting out an internal sigh, Kanata knows things are escalating. His mind races as he tries to decipher the meaning behind Sayuki's floral display. The emotions they convey are not all sunshine and rainbows, especially since they're fire type. Their feelings for him are starting to clash, and it's becoming a fiery situation.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.